Hello and welcome to DILAX Tech Talk. My name is Melton Chaidez and I'm a sales representative with DILAX here in the US, and I'll be hosting our conversation here today. My guest today is Manjiri Akalkutkar, who is a licensed architect and an urban transportation professional, and has worked with Via Metropolitan Transit in a multitude of roles for close to 20 years. Manjiri is also a part-time faculty in urban and regional planning program at the University of Texas at San Antonio. As vice president of the program delivery, she currently oversees the horizontal and vertical capital projects that range from medium to long range plans, projects, and studies. VIA was recognized by the Texas Transit Association as being an outstanding metro transit authority as recent as 2018. They serve 14 member cities and an unincorporated area in Bexar County in Texas, operating 7 days a week on 96 bus routes before the pandemic. Other than bus routes, VIA offers another range of services, including paratransit service for riders with disabilities, and their high frequency on route services through Via Primo, ride sharing, Via Link, and a commuter van pool service. So a ton of different things going on at Via Transit, which I hope we can discuss today. So without further ado, I want to welcome our guest, Manjiri. I'm very glad to have you here today and learn a little bit more about how Via works with data. And I understand that you're very passionate about this project, and on top of that, you have a lot of experience. So hopefully we can extract some of those insights that you've collected over the years today. So I'm going to jump into our first question, Manjiri, if you're ready. I want to kind of establish who VIA is from the jump. So I know VIA is an agency in San Antonio, Texas, and I want you to kind of tell us more about how big is the fleet, what services are included in it, and just kind of the background of who VIA Transit is as the core.
Thank you, Melton. Via Metropolitan Transit is in San Antonio, greater San Antonio area. Our service area is about 1,200 square miles. We offer fixed route bus service, paratransit service. It's an ADA paratransit service. We also offer Via Link rideshare. It's similar to Uber Pool or Lyft, but it is a zone-based service. And we also offer regional van pool service. As far as our fleet size is concerned, we have about 500 fixed route vehicles and about 200 paratransit vehicles. Paratransit service is also offered through a contractor and Via. So we split our service Via operated and a contractor operated. Our Via Link rideshare service is offered by Rideco as a prime contractor and Z-Trip as a that is 100% operated by a contractor. Of about our fleet size is about 500 vehicles, as I mentioned, plus or minus 80% of those vehicles have automatic passenger counters, which provides us good data.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, no, for sure. And I think you can read about how big the fleet is on paper, but it's a lot different when you actually hear it from the people that are working it on a day to day. That sounds like a very intricate system when you put it all together when they're actually operating. So I guess my next question is now transition more towards the main topic of today's conversation, which is data. I know you mentioned your buses came already equipped with automatic passenger counting, also known as APC systems, which I assume for you at some point was a new system to work with. So my question is, how did that go in terms of you being introduced to it, and what's kind of your relationship with automatic passenger counting today?
That's a good question. We are very passionate about data because we like data-driven decisions, also based on what we have. That helps us tremendously. In about 2015, 2016, VIA was in procurement of vehicles, which are Nova buses. And as we were looking at specification in early 24-ish, we realized that if we can add automatic passenger counters to our vehicle procurement, that is the best way to get that. It took us about 2 years after we got our first vehicles on site to validate all the counters set up a methodology and to ensure that we meet FTA, Federal Transit Administration's criteria to use automatic passenger counters as our primary method of reporting that data. Our APCs are supplied by UTA. They also helped us maintain it, and they also provide us analytical support. So that's how we started. Now we are into our fourth year. And apart from Nova buses, we had to retrofit some of our other fleet, specifically hybrid and Primo, which is an Abbey 60-foot vehicles. So that's where we are. We are about 80% on fleet, but we use statistical samples, which is critical for us to gather the data.
Right, right. And yeah, that's the challenge with any type of data, right? It's one thing to collect the data, it's another to ensure that the data is correct and it's usable when you actually make these decisions. So now in a world that we have, a ton of data, and especially in transit, it's becoming more and more prevalent. The idea of having decision making be data driven. And I know that's something you mentioned earlier, and I want to kind of dive into that. So we've mentioned APC data, right? That's an important piece of the equation. But what other types of data feeds can you combine that with in order to get even better insights in terms of who's writing your systems?
So we rely on various data sets. Some are like passenger counters on our buses to get ons and offs, alighting and boardings. But we also like to collect census data. So we use census data for social demographic sets, which is income levels, age, ethnicity, and also where jobs are, where people live, because we need to know our community well before we can plan the services. So we can customize some of the services. The other set of data we use is a fare box, because from fare box, we collect fare information. We offer discounts for students or citizens who are senior citizens. And we also offer passes for universities, UPass program for University of Texas, San Antonio, and some of the other colleges, alumni colleges. So that data combined with how people are paying, what categories they are, where they are coming from, tying it to the census, demographics, and also on the bus route where we have highest ridership, kinds of gives us total picture of our service area, but also travel patterns. We also augment that data from in-person origin and destination survey that information is collected on board by surveyors every 3 to 4 years. So we are very robust in collection of data, which also allows us to oversee performance, but also adapt to changes, which may be due to pandemic, which happened, or any other situations that may be happening, but also keeping our service on time and perform better.
Yeah, no, that is great, and it's that you hit it on the head when you said when you have data and you have a ton of different information on what your actual transit system's looking like, it allows you to become adaptable, right? When you have the data actually being fed into you understand what's going on real time basis. So which kind of leads me to that question you mentioned, the pandemic. I'm sure you're not alone. I'm sure VIA wasn't alone with having to deal with it. And I'm sure there was very tough decisions that had to be made, like limiting services, right? And so you would hope that you have the data on hand in order to make those decisions. So I want to just ask you, was any decisions that you had to make during the pandemic data driven, and what's kind of the use case that actually occurred at some point with you guys?
Yes, so imagine March 2020 with very little warning, we had to look at our service and cut down our service. We had mask mandate, but we also had a policy mandate that restricted 16 passengers on our 40-foot vehicles, 19 passengers on our 60-foot vehicle. And at the same time, we had via employees taking time off to take care of their loved ones, or they wanted to take care of themselves. Schools were shut down, so we had individuals who had to stay home to take care of children, right? So what we decided is we had good APC data, which told us which segments of the routes have higher ridership, which also told us at any given time of the day or day of the week how many people are on those routes. And we also knew from another data set we use, which is Swiftly, which is operational data on the blocks at the individual bus level, how they are performing. Looking at all of that data, within 6 to 8 weeks, we were able to adjust our service to a whole different schedule, implement that, and give information out to the citizens on how we made changes. So having that data on hand was very important for us because no problem. You want 16 passenger limits or 18 passengers limit. We could go and see where we are going to have critical issues of crowding. We could insert the vehicles. Not that everything worked out perfectly, but the data allowed us to solve 80% of the issues and provide service that met the requirement from the resource perspective and from customer perspective. And that also allowed us to suspend some routes where our ridership was not high, and we could suspend those routes if our threshold was, do you have another route within a walking distance? And the GIS tool allowed us to make that assessment. So these tools came really handy when we made those decisions.
Completely, yeah, and you know, you can't imagine with a system as large as VIA, what that could have happened, what it would look like if you didn't have those APC equipped buses and all the other kind of data collection systems that you had in place. And I'm sure you know VIA is kind of an example for a lot of different agencies throughout the country. So I think this is great information that you're giving us in terms of the actual use case that could occur in the future. Our next question is a little bit different, right? I kind of want to dive into the other forms of services that you also offer. I think for the most part, the conversations tend to orient around fixed route services, which obviously are a big key and a big player in what you do on the day to day. But you also offer ride sharing options. So I kind of want to understand how those two types of data sets kind of combine and tell you what the entire fleet and what the entire system is actually operating.
So we provide zone-based rideshare system called Via Link. We have 3 zones in our service area, and those 3 zones are where we have low density of jobs and population. And we eliminated routes in that area. Those were low performing routes, APC tells us, or ridership information tells us. So that is a separate contract. The fixed route service VIA operates. These zone-based rideshare service is operated by Rideco, our partner, but a contractor. They have their own app, just like Uber, Lyft. They have their own app. The beauty of the app is we have ability to collect a lot of data, and we have dashboards. So we collect where people are booking trips and where they are going. Obviously, because we don't disclose who those individuals are, that's protected. No identity is disclosed, but we know a point to point abstract information. We know how many vehicles are used by time of the day and day of the week. So we have ability to match the ridership to vehicle. This is a rideshare service. So we kind of set a goal that we need minimum 4 passengers per hour. So we can match those trips. Rideco has ability to work with us to adjust their algorithm. So we say our performance specs say everybody should be able to get ride within 20 minutes of their desired time. So that is able to do. And if the people are not able to get those rights, those are flagged and we get that data. So we have ability to monitor the service performance in real time and also through various reports. Now, two systems are separate, fixed route and uh, rideshare system. So there is somebody in our agency who looks at both data sets and then analyze if people are boarding or alighting from rideshare system at a bus stop, which has a high frequency or a good service, then we are able to derive that maybe 20 to 30% of rideshare boardings and alightings are happening at a stop, but we also correlate that with how many boardings or alighting are happening at our bus stop. So from that, we can deduce both systems have correlations, and the zone-based service is first mile, last mile. So people are using that. And then some onboard survey will validate those results. So while we use a lot of data sets, we get data, we match the data, but we also like to validate that data. So it's a pretty good solution. At some point in future, we hope that we can combine that and automate that process. But right now, we are at a point where the data sets are independent, but we are working together on both and able to make changes to our services.
Right, right. And yeah, you're not alone. It's an ongoing battle in not only the transit industry, but in many service industries, having all these data sets and finding an optimal way to integrate them and so making sense of the data. But, that's not something that will be solved tomorrow. The good thing is we have great minds working on it every day, and it sounds like VIA is definitely in a place where they have that capability. So thank you for sharing that. We're going to now transition to our final question. This is more open ended. I think honestly we could probably talk about this for the rest of the day. But I'll ask you to kind of put your knowledge and your experience into this one. In public transit, obviously we've mentioned there's a ton of different data that's being collected. You mentioned fare collection systems, APC, trip planning apps, CCTV cameras. There's a ton of different onboard computation that's happening. What would be your recommendation for any agency that is in the initial phase of starting to work with more data? What's a tip, recommendation, any word of advice that you could give?
I think it is, if I have to give advice, it is important on a whiteboard or a blackboard, first map out what are the goals and objectives of the agency. Our goal was we need to provide a reliable service, and we need to provide service where demand exists, either current demand or a future demand. And we wanted to ensure we provide service in a more equitable way. So by setting that goal for our agency, I'm just use a case study here. We knew what information is needed to achieve that goal. And when we know what information is needed, the secondary question is what tools are available in market. There are a lot of technologies, a lot of things available. So you identify tools. We knew we wanted to have segment loads on vehicle by time of the day on each route. So we knew APC is a better way to go to get a ridership data. We know we want to monitor a service, so we use Swiftly platform. So they match the scheduled service with actual service and give us a lot of data analytics. We also knew we wanted equitable way, and we want to meet federal requirements of Title VI, Title IX, and many other. We need socioeconomic data, right? So we use census data. But the one key thing is you can get the data. If you know where you want to be, you can analyze the data. I cannot emphasize enough the resource requirement to validate the data set, analyze the data set, and third, most importantly, put your result in a way that it could be used to inform the decisions. Because otherwise, data are like gigabytes and gigabytes of data. In the end, you want one-page report for your senior management that tells them how we are performing and what we need to do. So you need resources to do that. And the last thing is having resources to keep track of newer technologies, because any equipment, it is going to be old, new things are going to come in market. So you need resources to keep track of that. You need budgets set aside for operations and maintenance of all the equipment and softwares and everything you procure. So you have to have a plan in place upfront. And then you need to know what is the most important and plan it phase wise. We have done that to large extent, but sometimes you find opportunities to partner with someone and you have to take that opportunities. You have to have a plan, but you have to be nimble and flexible enough to take uh, opportunities like federal grants might come in, or you find a partner, or you find a partner agency who has the data set. So that's the whole thing about managing data and having a plan who's starting now. I'm sure many agencies may be doing some of this manually. And then how do you convert your manual effort into online cloud-based or software-based effort is the other thing. You have to set aside some time for training and evaluation. So that's all I can say from based on our experience is we spend money into resource professional development and also overall better planning across the division. I'm in planning, doesn't mean I do everything in planning. Lot of help is from fleet facilities, operations, scheduling, technology, you name it. Every department is involved in this. I'm just a planner who has ability to put things together and provide information, but there is a whole bunch of team members who help out. So that's
Yeah.
that's what I can say.
Definitely. No, and thank you again. I mean that these are all really valuable insights because VIA is somebody and an organization that's actually doing a lot of the revolutionary work that could be an example for a lot of smaller agencies across the country. So sharing your story, your experiences with it is really turning out an effect, and hopefully this can help people in the future. So with that, Manjiri, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. You were a pleasure to chat with. I think we got some pretty valuable insights on what VIA is doing correctly and what the future could look like. So hopefully this helps out agencies in the future. For everyone watching, I'd like to invite you guys to follow our YouTube and LinkedIn page. We'll be posting this content there in the future. And if anything in this discussion was helpful or you have any questions or ideas, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure we'll be willing to accommodate any questions and hopefully answer them in future videos. So again, thank you for joining us, Manjiri. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we'll be posting here soon. Stay tuned.